Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second meeting of the Committee on Commerce and Labor for the 83rd Legislative Session. Madam Secretary, please call roll.
Senator Daly.
Here.
Senator Ellison.
Present.
Senator Flores.
Present.
Senator Lang. Senator Rogish. Senator Scheibel. Senator Steinbeck. Chair Pazina.
Thank you so much. We do have a quorum and all committee members present. Welcome to the members as well as the audience in Carson City, Las Vegas, and those that are following our meeting online. Today we have a presentation from the Cannabis Compliance Board as well as a bill hearing. Before we begin, though, I'd like to make a few housekeeping announcements. First, I'd like to remind everyone to please silence all of your electronic devices while we're here in the committee room. Members of the public may provide testimony in various ways, all of which are listed on the agenda. Today, we will have public comment period toward the end of the meeting. You may also submit public comment in writing, either in addition to testifying or in the place of. If you wish to testify in person, please sign in at the table by the door and leave a business card with our committee secretaries. When testifying in person, please turn on the microphone to speak and turn it off when you've finished, because there are other people listening to and viewing the meeting in Vegas and online. Please also state and spell your name for the record. Anyone who'd like to receive electronic notifications of scheduled bills and access to the committee's meeting materials may do so by signing up on NELIS, the Electronic Legislative Information System, on the website. Committee members will be using their laptops to view handouts and other exhibits, and please don't view this as a sign of disrespect or disattention. With that, we're going to get started on our first item on the agenda, an overview presentation from the Cannabis Compliance Board. And we would love to welcome Executive Director Hum. Please feel free to introduce yourself as well as your co-presenters, and please begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Are we ready? Excellent. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is James Hum, James-Humm, and I'm the Executive Director of the Nevada Cannabis Compliance Board. Joining me today is Deputy Director Mike Miles to my right, our Chief of Health and Safety, Kara Cronkite, and behind me I have our Chief of Administration, Steve Gilbert, and our Chief of Investigations, Dave Staley, for questions. Just want everybody to know whatever measure of success I will have in this appointment will be because of them and their incredible teams who serve the state with dedication and unrivaled efficiency. Also, apologies to the members who just saw me yesterday afternoon at 1 o'clock. I think there's like 3 or 4 of you, so I apologize. You're going to hear the same presentation. So, quick background on myself and the agency. Governor Lombardo named me to lead the CCB in December of 2023, whereas in the prior 6 years I had the pleasure of serving the state in various roles at both the Nevada Attorney General's Office and the Governor's Office of Economic Development. During my 14 months at the agency, we have already, and I know we will continue to accomplish many great things. Now, if you'll let me, I'll walk you through the presentation. So the timeline of Nevada's cannabis program. The Cannabis Compliance Board was established through Assembly Bill 533. The board consists of 5 members appointed by the governor. AB 533 also created the 12-person Cannabis Advisory Commission, which studies cannabis-related topics and makes recommendations to the board. In 2000, Nevadans voted to legalize medical use. In 2015, the first medical marijuana establishment opened. 2016, voters approved ballot question 2, legalizing adult use, also known probably to most of you as recreational use. In 2017, recreational sales began in Nevada. The state's cannabis program transitioned from the Division of Public and Behavioral Health to the Department of Taxation. In 2019, Governor Sisolak signed AB 533, as noted above, creating the Nevada Cannabis Compliance Board, which is modeled after Nevada's Gaming Control Board. The state's cannabis program transitioned from the Department of Tax to the Cannabis Compliance Board in 2020. Mission statement. So who we are, what do we set out to do? Now, Nevada Cannabis Compliance Board governs Nevada's cannabis industry through strict regulation of all areas of its licensing and operations, protecting the public health and safety of our citizens and visitors while holding cannabis licensees to the highest ethical standard. What are the CCB Board's duties and responsibilities? As noted prior, it consists of 5 members who are all appointed by the governor. We hold regular monthly public board meetings. We host ad hoc regulatory workshops, review and approve final licensures, transfers of interest, management services agreements, and the like. approve the service of disciplinary actions such as complaints, act as the final arbiter of discipline, and has final approval regarding subsequent settlement agreements. Additionally, the board may hold emergency board meetings to consider urgent matters such as summary suspensions. The CAC. As noted before, CAC is tasked with studying issues related to the cannabis industry and making policy and regulatory recommendations to the CCB. The 12-member commission is chaired by the CCB Executive Director, that's me. Includes 8 representatives appointed by the governor with expertise related to the cannabis industry. In addition, to round out the last 3, it includes the Nevada Attorney General, the Director of the Department of Public Safety, and the Executive Director of the Department of Taxation. Currently, the CAC has 3 subcommittees: Subcommittee on Rescheduling, Descheduling, Subcommittee on Market Participation, and Public Safety and the Illicit Market. The CAC meets at my discretion, similar to the Nevada Gaming Policy Committee. How are we broken down? So we're broken down into 3 main divisions: licensing, inspection and audit, which covers health and safety, and investigations and enforcement. Our licensing division processes and reviews licenses and renewal applications and collects all fees associated with those. They also manage cannabis registration card programs. Currently, we have 20,000 plus active cards, and there are 14,500 plus individuals that work in the cannabis industry. Licensing also assists the Department of Taxation in collecting cannabis-related taxes from licensees. Inspection and Audit Division, they perform audits and inspections of the cannabis facilities. They track and monitor all inventory from seed to sale and audit monthly and quarterly reports from licensees as required by the CCB. They evaluate all complaints made against the licensed facility, including incident reports. Our Investigations and Enforcement Division reviews and processes transfers of interest for change of ownership requests, vets potential licensees and affiliated owners, officers, and board members, which includes a full suite of background checks and financial analyses as part of a required suitability review. Additionally, our Investigations and Enforcement Division partners with local and state law enforcement regarding criminal investigations, including enforcement on illicit market activity. Types of facilities. We have 6 different types of licensees: cultivation, who grow, harvest, and package cannabis and sell cannabis to cannabis establishments but not to consumers. We have production licenses, so they purchase cannabis, manufacture, process, and package the cannabis and cannabis products, and then they sell to other cannabis establishments, but not to consumers. Retail or dispensary, that's probably what most of you have heard of. They're licensed to purchase cannabis, cannabis products, and products from other cannabis establishments, and they can sell those products directly to the consumer. We have testing labs, who conducts all the laboratory testing on the cannabis and the cannabis products. Distribution license, and they're licensed to transport cannabis from one cannabis establishment to another. And we have consumption lounges, licensed to operate businesses for the consumption of single-use or ready-to-consume cannabis products on site. Taxable sales. So as you can see from the gray table, taxable sales reported by adult use retail stores and medical dispensaries in fiscal year 24 was $829.2 million. That is a decrease of 2% compared to the fiscal year 2023. Additionally, $43.7 million were collected for the 15% excise tax in fiscal year 2024, and $76.8 million were collected for the 10% state retail tax in fiscal year 2024. As with industry, the market will dictate demand of the product, but as always, my goal is to provide certainty and a fair playing field to the industry so they know what's expected of them, and to provide stability to withstand downturns, to provide stability to withstand downward economic turns. So where does that money go? How is it distributed? So the distribution of $107.8 million went to the State Education Fund in fiscal year 2024. The breakdown of that was $76.8 million, as noted before, from retail cannabis excise tax, and $31 million from wholesale cannabis excise tax revenue. So, excuse me for a minute, but I'll kind of read some of the NRS and give you some background on those tax dollars. NRS 372A 290 directs all revenue from the 10% state retail cannabis excise tax into the State Education Fund, which some of you may formerly know was the distributive school account. The state wholesale cannabis excise tax revenue is collected and then transferred to the CCB, which is used to then support the agency's operation and the regulatory oversight of the cannabis industry in Nevada. The CCB also distributes a total of $5 million of this revenue collected from wholesale excise tax to local governments to carry out the provisions of NRS 678 C and D. The remaining proceeds are transferred to the State Education Fund by the CCB, along with any residuals from civil penalties, licensing, and other fees collected as outlined in statute. The Nevada Department of Education is then responsible for distribution from the State Education Fund to the school districts. Industry snapshot. So to kind of give you an overview of those 6 license types that we mentioned, there are currently 387 total medical and adult use operational licenses statewide. As you would imagine, the majority are in Southern Nevada, 260 operational licenses in Clark, unincorporated Clark, Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, Henderson, and Mesquite. 62 operational licenses in Washoe County, unincorporated Washoe, Reno, and Sparks. A breakdown of those license types: 128 cultivators, 100 producers, 8 independent testing labs, 103 medical dispensaries or retail cannabis stores, 46 distribution facilities, and 2 consumption lounges. Additionally, as mentioned before, our administration department oversees our agent cards. So pursuant to NRS 678B, 390, and 340, cost of an agent card is $150 per category, and each card is valid for 2 years. Each category, cultivation, production, distribution, dispensary, lab, and consumption lounge, requires separate cards, all at $150 each. CCB receives an average of 1,012 agent card applications monthly. We issue an average of 902 temporary agent cards monthly, which allows Nevadans to enter or continue to work in the cannabis industry. And a stat we're really proud of is, pending a state and FBI background check, an applicant can expect to receive a temporary agent card within 48 hours of submitting their application. So we can keep people working or get people into the industry quickly. Laws and regulations. If you'd like to read more about us, all the rules and regulations governing the CCB can be found on the CCB's website under the Laws and Regulations tab. This page includes Title 56 NRS Revised Statutes 678A through D, as well as the Nevada Cannabis Compliance Regulations. But also please note our NCCRs are soon to be NACs, and currently they're all broken down by regulation. Current and trending challenges. So the economics of the industry. So as noted in the prior slide, tax revenue and sales revenue are down in FY24 compared to 23 and 22. This decline is consistent with sales trends in other states with mature cannabis markets and can be attributed at least in part to the after effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. The slight downward trend is consistent, again, with the 15% wholesale excise tax and 10% retail tax. Other challenges: the illicit market. Cannabis market study contracted by the CCB estimates the illicit market size at $242 million, or about 21% of the total cannabis market in Nevada. Additionally, nationwide concerns regarding synthetic cannabinoids. You may have heard of intoxicating hemp. Synthetics are Delta-8 THC, that's what they're referring to. National concern is growing over these products, which are often sold in smoke shops and gas stations that are not regulated by the CCB. These are products that are over the allowable legal limit to be considered hemp. Agency operations and efficiencies. White Pine County licensing, 1 cultivation and 1 production license were issued last year. We're very proud of that. That's our 2nd licensing round in agency history, and happy to report to Senator Ellison that they have received their final licensing and can open. Cannabis consumption lounges, these will continue to open on a rolling basis. 2 are currently open. Mobile labs. In 2024, the CCB enlisted mobile labs to test edibles, plants, concentrates, and infused products in the field. The results take about 15 minutes. These have proved very successful thus far and have already been used to assist law enforcement across the state. Additionally, the market study I mentioned prior was commissioned. We commissioned an independent market study as required by NRS 678A 310. Agency operations and efficiency. Through the governor's initiatives, we've tried to work on economic growth, creating a business-friendly regulatory environment, public safety, partnering with DPS on illicit market concerns, government support services, recruiting and retention of a talented team, providing outstanding customer service, collaborating with other state agencies, including tax, DPS, and the Department of Agriculture. Office organization. The new supervisory positions approved by the legislature in 2023 in the Audit, Inspection, and Investigations Division improved efficiencies within their division. staff training and improvement. In the interim, the CCB team received numerous trainings and utilized resources inside and outside the agency, leveraged trainings from other state agencies, and provided numerous trainings to licensees and industry stakeholders. Recruiting and retention, we like to think the CCB is a pretty desirable place to work, creating an innovative and forward-looking agency, and we currently have a vacancy rate of only 1%, which we're very proud of. Audit inspection, also happy to report that the audit inspection teams completed all field work and 100% of licensees were visited in 2024. Regulatory updates, the board, as dictated by the governor's executive order, considered multiple regulation changes which were workshopped and approved in June of 2024. Our bill implementations from the 2023 session, SB 195, that changed disciplinary action, revamped the provisions relating to disciplinary action taken by the board, including the settlement process for any complaints. It limited civil penalties to a max of $20,000 for any single violation. Additionally, it eliminated time and effort billing for audit and inspection. SB 328, the CCB is no longer exempt from the Administrative Procedures Act. LCB is currently revising the NCCRs into the NAC format as mentioned prior, as well as all regulatory changes submitted in June of 2024. Board composition, terms of office, qualifications, and training of board members, and the executive director appointment were all shifted. The CCB welcomed 2 new board members over the last year, one in January of 2024, with another new member starting this month. His first meeting will be February 20th, and I'm happy to report that this week he underwent his training as required by SB 328. SB 277 was another bill out of the 2023 session. Required the CAC to provide a study and recommendations concerning the potential effects on the Nevada cannabis industry if cannabis were to be removed from Schedule 1 of the UCC Act or the Federal Controlled Substance Act. That report was submitted on February 29th to the LCB. Dual licensing, the CCB combined licenses for both medical and adult use, creating one fee for license renewal. Subsequently, all licenses have been combined since the passage of the bill. Individual sale amount increases. The individual sale amounts increased. Notices were sent to industry, and adjustments were made to the tracking and inventory systems. Excluded felonies. That required the board to develop and implement a process by which a person who has been convicted of an excluded felony offense may submit to the board a petition for an exemption from those prohibitions. 9 have been submitted in total. 4 were approved without conditions, 3 were approved with conditions, 1 did not respond, and 1 has not brought requested documents to the board. So that process is working. We're helping people to gain access to employment within the industry. Issuance and renewal fees. It decreases the maximum amount of the fees the CCB is authorized to charge for the issuance or renewal of an adult use cannabis establishment license. And lastly, secure entrances authorizes any cannabis establishment to have more than 1 entrance so long as each entrance is secure. And finally, our legislative initiatives for the 83rd session. We have AB 76, which will be in front of the Assembly Judiciary to start. Revises provisions relating to cannabis, as you would guess. Amends statutory languages to dovetail with the requirements of the APA. Clarifies the requirements of ID scanning at cannabis sales facilities and the definition of synthetic cannabinoid. Adds language to allow for immediate temporary cease of operations due to imminent health hazard, consistent with other agencies enforcing public policy. Revises package size limits to be consistent with new possession limits and industry standards. And I must also note, we've worked with some key stakeholders and members of industry, so we will be bringing a substantive amendment forward to that bill when it gets heard, and we're tentatively scheduled for next week. So excited to share that amendment with everybody, and we'll move forward there. Chair, that concludes my prepared remarks.
Thank you so much, Executive Director and team. Do we have any questions on the committee? Senator Ellison?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you for getting back with me. That was wonderful. One thing I do have a question about is on hemp. Where are we at on, and are we going forward on still on the laws on and getting hemp more active in Nevada? I know a couple years back we worked on it pretty heavy, but can you give us any kind of an update or where we're at and where they're going?
Yes, absolutely, Senator. Thank you for the question. I've actually had a few legislators approach me to potentially work on this, as well as industry. So to give a definitive answer as to where we're going, I can't tell you exactly where we're going, but I know that that's been a conversation that's wanted to be had during the session. So we're open to any discussions. We do not currently regulate hemp, but again, it has been mentioned that that might possibly be coming our way. So we're open to any discussions and happy to elaborate on that.
The reason I asked that, there was a study done several years back, and then we brought it up in, I thought it was Government Affairs a couple years ago, and what come out of it was there's a small part of that would help in brain cancer, and I thought that was pretty neat because we just lost a friend with brain cancer, and I thought that was wonderful. There's something out there that might help cure, so that's why I brought it up.
James, for the record, sorry, forgot to say that last time. My sympathies for your friend. As far as that goes, we actually also don't handle the research aspect of that, but I do believe that there is a bill by Assemblyman Carter that's coming forward to fund research for the Cannabis Policy Institute, which can further the research on cannabis and hemp.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Madam.
Vice Chair Daley.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I just question on, I remember when you guys first started to match kind of what they have for the Gaming Control Board, and you wanted to be exempt from the regulatory process, same as the gaming control. And we had a hybrid system for a while. And I was happy to see last session that you said, hey, now we're going to go back and just go through the regulatory process. So I just was curious if you think that's working better for you. I think it's a good process to develop the regulation and then come before the Legislative Commission. And I know the Legislative Commission could say, hey, we want to look at them and could bring you in, but somebody had to ask to have it happen. So is the process working well for you? I think it is a little bit more transparent in that, and I'm glad to see you're under that, but I was just curious how you guys felt about it.
Thank you for the question, Senator. This will be our first go-around, so I guess not enough data to report. But kidding aside, yes, we went through our first regulatory process in that manner. I believe we held 9 workshops. Is that correct, Deputy Director? Yeah, I believe we held 9 workshops to go through that process again after the governor's executive order. Went through that, again, exhausting process, but not meaning that word with any negative implication. So all the regulations fully vetted, submitted June of 2024. Again, it was new to us. We called an emergency board meeting at the last day of June to run it by the board, but that ended up working out very smoothly. So I guess we will report back. We're still waiting to hear back on our conversion of NACs. I know that that's still in the work, and a thank you to LCB who's worked diligently on that with us. You know, we have 15 different NCCRs, so that's a longer process, and then we have the upcoming changes. So thus far we've gone through the process, and it's working thus far. Excellent. Thanks, Senator.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you for the answer. Assistant Majority Leader Lang.
Okay, so since we had the presentation yesterday, I had a chance to think about a couple things. And one of the things I'm interested in, I'm a former educator, and one of the reasons that we voted cannabis into Nevada was a way to add some extra funding to education. I'm curious, since I know it's gone down in the last year, but since cannabis was passed in Nevada, what has that graph looked like?
Thank you for the question, Senator. It has gone down. And so as mentioned in my earlier slide, I believe I'll get you the exact numbers, but I believe it peaked at 1.2 million in 2021.
1.2 billion, yes.
I'm going to phone a friend. I think Deputy Director has the historical numbers.
Deputy Director Miles, for the record. Senator, it spiked during COVID about 1.2 billion in sales, and it's been slowly going down ever since. And it's about, I think it's 832 million right now.
And would you, is that because sales are down, because of illicit drugs, or a combination of both?
Again, Deputy Director Miles, for the record. It's a combination of things. It's a combination of during COVID, obviously they got a lot of checks. Everybody was home. I think a lot more use happened during that time frame. And it was also brand new here in Nevada. And also, we were one of the few that it was still legal. A lot of states have made it legal ever since. So the tourism for that has dropped. And other combinations of what you said as well, just market activities, illicit market, and it's caused it to drop slowly.
And I just want to add one thing. I need to correct the record. In Assembly Judiciary, I said 24 states were recreational and 38 medical. We ran the numbers again. It's 26 recreational and 40 medical now. So there's much more open access to it as well nationwide.
Is there a way to harness more of those revenues for education? You may not want to, but I'm just curious.
I mean, we are always very conscious of the budget, our internal operational budget. We have not presented it yet, but we're flat, but for the raises that this body and the governor so generously granted us and our staff, so thank you again for that. But we're always budget conscious. You know, every dollar that we spend does not go to the state education fund. So I assure you as executive director, every dollar that we spend, I make sure that it's needed, and that we guarantee that anything outside of that necessity goes to the state education fund.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? I had one, and I'm going to go back to your presentation, the industry snapshot. And I apologize if this was asked yesterday. It looks like the cost of an agent card is $150, which is valid for 2 years. But additional cards are necessary for cultivation, production, distribution, dispensary, laboratory, and consumption lounges. They each require separate cards, also at $150. So are those cards also good for 2 years? And looking at the cost, if someone needed all of these, it's over $1,000 every 2 years they do it. Can you just explain that process? And I apologize.
Yeah, yes, Chair. James Hum for the record. Thank you for the question. That is all accurate. It's $150 per card, per vertical, per license type, if you will. And yes, I think that math pencil's right. 6 times 150. It's not 900 if you were to work in all of the different verticals. So yes, that can get expensive, and yes, it is. It is every 2 years that they would be required to do that.
And as a follow-up, is that for employees or just for the person running the facility? Those cards.
James Hum for the record. Thank you for the question, Chair. It is for everyone, owners, operators, board members, and employees.
Okay, thank you so much. That just seems very expensive for an employee who's trying to pay their utility bills, put a roof over their head, and then insure their job by paying. By the time you have those 6 plus the agent card, I guess, it gets expensive. So thank you. Just curious. Any other questions? Okay. Senator Rogich.
Good morning. I have a quick question with regard to the illicit cannabis market. My understanding is that a study was conducted by the CCB in which it was found that it could rise up to $370 million of untaxed revenue. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question, Senator. We actually contracted a third party to conduct the study, so it was not done by us, by ourselves. But yes, I believe that study reflected it was 21 to 30%, so it could possibly be up to the figure that you mentioned. That's what they reported in the study.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing no further questions, thank you so much. You may step back from the table.
Thank you, Chair.
Safely. We thank you again for the presentation and for coming into town for yet another committee presentation. Yes, absolutely. We have our first bill hearing this morning, and for our new members of the Senate and members of the public, I want to explain the process. First, we will hear the bill presentation, and I've allocated a maximum of 20 minutes for this purpose. Next, members may ask questions, but please do check in with me so I can keep track of who has questions. After Q&A, we'll open up to testimony and support, opposition, and neutral from members of the public. We ask that you keep your testimony brief and please avoid repetition of comments made by previous speakers, although you're always welcome to say ditto or me too. Due to time constraints, we may have to move on to the next person who wants to provide public comment. In such a case, please send your public comments in writing to the committee's email address so we can ensure that the committee sees your comments in Nellis. A reminder on providing testimony. A person must state for the record whether they support, oppose, or are neutral on a bill before the committee. As such, support consists of approval of the measure as written or as written along with the proposed amendments that have been approved by the sponsor of the bill. Opposition consists of not supporting the measure as written or as revised by an amendment that has not been approved by the bill's sponsor. Neutral position on a measure is one in which the person offers particular insight on the bill but expresses no position on the measure. And with that, we're now going to open the hearing on Senate Bill 44. I believe our presenters are in Las Vegas. This measure revises provisions relating to financial services. Please welcome Kathy Sheehy, the Commissioner of the Mortgage Lending Division at the Department of Business and Industry. And Commissioner, please begin when you're ready, and feel free to introduce your co-presenters.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Senator Pazina. My name is Kathy Sheehy, C-A-T-H-Y, S-H-E-E-H-Y. And to the right of me is Commissioner O'Loughlin. And in the galley as well, I've got both the Deputy Commissioner from MLD, Zeliana Dari, and Deputy Commissioner Mary Young for Financial Institution. I am privileged here to be here this morning and to present to you Senate Bill 44. Let me start this slide. Do you guys have visual of this, the PowerPoint?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. So a brief introduction with the overview of the Mortgage Lending Division. We are tasked to regulate the non-depository mortgage lending industry and related professions. Accordingly, this entails the licensing, examination, and seeking compliance through enforcement of those that conduct this activity as defined in 645A, 645B, and 645F, and for the registration of the credit service organizations under 598. MLD has seen tremendous growth in the non-depository mortgage lending industry over the years, and with that growth and the advancement of technology comes risk that MLD currently does not have the authority to regulate or enforce. And with the financial institution, they regulate the non-depository, depository, and fiduciary financial institution. And as indicated on this slide, the purpose of this legislation will simply allow MLD and FID to align state regulation with existing federal standards for safeguarding customer information, and MLD to establish additional governance and operational requirements for the financial service providers. The overall objective is to enhance consumer protection, implement data security measures, and regulate financial service providers operating in this state. On the next slide, on the left, you'll see the provincial standards for non-bank mortgage servicers and the statutes that will cover. And on the right-hand side, a little more extensive, the non-bank model data security law, and then it breaks it down between the statutes for the mortgage lending division versus the financial institution division. So it just has the two components, and we'll walk through both of these separately, and then on the next slide, and I apologize in advance, this is the slide that was presented during the budget presentation. I inadvertently only have the mortgage lending division's licensing and permit stats here. Financial institution does have the same information. I just did not include it in this presentation, and we can provide it to you at the end of the meeting. So first, I will begin with the prudential standards for non-bank mortgage servicers.
It looks like the
And to give you
slides are
some
not moving
information-
forward, just as a heads up. If IT in Las
Okay.
Vegas can maybe assist with getting your slides to move forward to where you are in the
Okay.
presentation.
I think I can do this manually. Okay, so it should be on slide 5 now for prudential standards for non-bank mortgage servicers. Okay. All right, so as indicated here, the prudential standards presented in this bill is being presented to you today is to create and maintain sound financial condition and safe management practices which are essential for compliance and consumer protection. The non-bank mortgage servicers are an important segment of the financial services community. These servicers currently service more than 60% of the agency mortgage market, roughly 53% of the $13 trillion single-family residential mortgage market. 6 out of the 10 largest primary mortgage servicers are non-bank mortgage servicers. As these mortgage servicers are institutions responsible for transmitting monthly borrower payments to the investors or loan holders, the mortgage servicers are an integral part of the mortgage market ecosystem. The mortgage servicers occupy the space between the consumer and the loan holder or investor. This creates an obligation to both parties of the transaction, making the servicers responsible for efficiently servicing the market and protecting the consumers. On the next slide, in Nevada, during the 78th legislative session back in 2015, NRS 645F was created, which introduced and required non-bank mortgage servicers to obtain a license to continue to conduct this activity in Nevada. Since then, there has not been any changes to these laws. Over the 10 years or so, through tremendous growth, the sound financial condition and safe management practices have been put to test. The state regulatory system is charged through the individual state statutes to establish effective corporate controls and consumer-focused responsibilities for non-bank mortgage servicers. These controls and responsibilities are only effective when they are enforceable. Currently, we do not have any mandates that would allow this enforcement. A national set of standards covering both agency and non-agency servicing is the most efficient format for the mortgage servicers that operate in multiple jurisdictions and would present less regulatory burden rather than unique requirements from state to state. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are corporations under the conservatorship of their regulators, the Federal Housing Finance Agency, FHFA. FHFA has authority over Fannie and Freddie, but does not have the direct regulatory authority over non-bank mortgage companies and servicers. The prudential standards presented here today is uniform to those that FHFA enforces over Fannie and Freddie. Therefore, we are not introducing anything new or different for the non-bank mortgage servicers that would need to comply to. While the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, CFPB, is a regulator of non-bank mortgage servicers, they enforce consumer compliance protections but has not established any regulatory requirements or standards pertaining to the financial condition of non-bank mortgage servicers. This prudential standards covers two categories, which will be listed in the next slide: financial condition and corporate governance. So under the prudential standards for financial conditions, the areas that are covered are capital and liquidity, and under corporate governance, it establishes establishing a board of directors, internal and external audit, and oversee risk management. I can pause here, or I can continue to the non-bank model security law if there's any questions on prudential standards.
We will have all questions at the end of the presentation. Please continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Continuing on slide 8, let me move. For the non-bank model data security law being presented here today, the statutory language that establishes comprehensive standards for data security for the non-bank financial institutions that operate here in Nevada. Adopting these standards positions both MLD and FID as proactive in addressing cyber threats and provide clear authority when examining and enforcing data security standards. It aligns state regulators with federal standards, leveraging existing Federal Trade Commission, FTC, safeguard rule. By adopting the model law, this enhances the policy and security the privacy and security of consumers' personal information. This will provide a secure and reliable financial landscape. The standards establish comprehensive data security standards that financial institutions must adhere to. These standards are designed to protect sensitive information and mitigate cyber threats. On the next slide, some elements of the existing Federal Trade Commission standards for the safeguarding of consumer information, designating a qualified individual, train their staff, create a written incident plan, and there's several others listed as well. Okay, on the next page, some key provisions that I'll highlight. Under the federal standards, the mentioned federal citation there, it has a comprehensive information security program and a notification event, which will authorize when unauthorized data breaches occur. So under the FTC, they will be notified, and then this will allow the state commissioner of both financial institution and the commissioner of mortgage lending to be notified as well. Under the state compliance requirement, this will apply to a wide range of financial service provider, including private and professional guardians, mortgage companies, loan originators, mortgage servicers, escrow agencies, collection agency, student loan servicers, payday lenders, and trust companies, etc. Again, the entities must maintain a security program as part of their books and records, which will allow us to complete our examinations and notify state regulators about the notification events. And the expanded regulatory oversight mandates state commissioners to adopt notification procedures to providers regarding security breaches. And again, just a reminder, there's no new laws being introduced here. We're simply referencing the existing safeguard rules that was mentioned at the federal level. On the next page is just a brief summary. The key benefits of this will be consumer protection, safeguards sensitive consumer information or customer information from data breaches or misuse. The operational integrity ensures financial service providers and mortgage servicers meet robust corporate governance and operational standards, and regulatory clarity provides a clear framework for oversight, compliance, and enforcement. This concludes our presentation, and we stand for questions.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Sheehy. Senator Flores.
Excuse me, I lost my voice last night, so I apologize. Thank you for that presentation. Appreciate it. One question, and I understand that we're codifying CFR 314, but I wanted to know, could you help clarify when there is there was this reference to a notification event, and it's just when encrypted information is stolen, I guess would be the simplified version of saying that. I'm curious to know when, presently, under the rules now, when you notify the Federal Trade Commission, what do they do with that information now? Do they collect that information, and then do they immediately notify the Commissioner for Financial Institutions now? Or I just want to know what happens after they're notified, because I understand that we're now just going to have two different notifications. We're going to be notified locally at the state level and then also at the federal level. But I'm just trying to understand what they do with that information after there's a notification of a breach.
Thank you for the question, Senator. Through you, Senator Pazina, through you to Senator Flores.
You can go direct, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Great question. Currently, when the companies report to the Federal Trade Commission, we do not get any notification from there. So this will ensure that we are notified in addition to the FTC because there is no requirement for the companies to notify us at this time.
And Madam Chair, if I could have a quick follow-up. I know I had an opportunity to, back in 2015, I believe, I worked in NRS 603A when there is a data breach, there's certain notification triggers that we have to implement. That's still the rule now, right? If there is a breach, there's an obligation to immediately notify the possible individuals who may have been impacted. But this goes further than that, correct?
Thank you for the question, Senator Flores. I'm not sure about the 603A requirement, but this will just simply require the companies to notify us directly of the breach or the information that was compromised so that we can review that, and if necessary, we can commence an examination or at least reach out to the company to ensure that they're taking steps to ensure the safety of the customer information that was breached.
Final question, if it's okay, Madam Chair. And I'm sorry, I cut somebody off. My apologies.
That's okay. Mary Young, Deputy Commissioner for the Financial Institutions Division. I just wanted to clarify on the 603A. This will work in conjunction with that because currently 603A just gives the authority to the Attorney General's office. It does not give any notification requirements for our two divisions. So this doesn't take away from that 603A. This just helps our divisions, like Commissioner Sheehy had stated, give us the regulatory authority.
Understood. And my only question was just specifically what you just hit on. If there is a breach, internally you have a policy now that you must notify the impacted parties, correct? You mandate that upon whatever business may have been involved, that is a requirement now, correct?
Kathy Sheehy, for the record, MLD does not have that requirement at this time.
Understood. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Senator Rogich.
Good morning, and thank you for the presentation. My understanding is that there's a fiscal note accompanying this legislation. Will you be providing details on the estimated costs and benefits that will, for both the businesses and the state, and break down the industry sector and the business size?
Sandy O'Loughlin for the Financial Institutions Division. Currently, we do not have a fiscal note for the financial institutions on this particular bill.
Kathy Sheehy, for the record, MLD does not have a fiscal note for this as well.
Okay, I believe Vice Chair Daley had some questions too, and thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I do have a couple of questions, but I wanted to follow up first on Senator Flores' questions regarding the notification. So now there's going to be dual notification, and if I understand correctly, you guys are going to adopt by regulation what the timing is on that. Are you planning on matching what my understanding of the federal requirement says as soon as possible, but not later than 30 days, that they have to provide the notification to your agency? Whether they have to provide notification to the people whose data was breached, that's a separate issue. But are you planning on notification for you through the regulation process, matching those federal requirements?
Thank you for the question, Senator Daley. That is correct.
Very good. And I think we just wanted to make sure that we're trying to match everything else the feds are doing, so we'll get that as well. So my second set of questions, if I can, Madam Chair, specifically I'm looking at Section 10 and then again in Section 15 where you define an agency, and the agency means a federal home loan mortgage corporation, Federal National Mortgage Association, the federal regulated institutions that people are familiar with, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, et cetera. So what are the characteristics of that agency or those entities that require a separate definition, and then similar in Section 15, I believe it is, government-sponsored enterprise is defined, similar agencies are listed there. So my follow-up question after that, so what are the characteristics of those agencies that define or need a definition because they have certain privileges later in the bill?
Kathy Sheehy, for the record. Thank you, Senator Daley, for the question. If I understand your question correctly, I believe the agency needs to be defined here because some of the mortgages are non-agency. And so I think we just wanted to be clear between the difference of who's purchasing these, who's regulating these. And again, I think I mentioned early in the presentation that although they may regulate these different Freddie, Fannie, and Ginnie, they don't have the administrative oversight on these transactions.
And understood in that, I think, I just wanted to understand that a little bit, or at least get your point of view on that. Because as I read through the bill in section 25, subsection 2, it exempts those agencies, if you will, that are defined in section 10 from the provisions of 9 through 13. So all of the things that you're putting in that every other non-agency entity has to follow, they're exempt. And from what I think you just said in your answer is that because they have a different oversight and regulatory process, being the federally sponsored mortgage lending agencies on that. I believe in section 27, an agency has extra authority that they can grant a covered institution, all of the other agencies, approval for alternative procedures, right? And then again, in existing language, section 34 sub 3, agencies are exempt again. And I know that's existing language. And I'll get to my point on what my concern is, and I'm hoping we can have an amendment that clarifies this. Everything that I've heard, or at least there's the possibility of, and some of the financial institutions and mortgage lending and various things, is that under the current administration, those agencies may very well be privatized before the end of the next 4 years. And if they are, I don't think they should retain the same exemptions and status that they're being given in this law. So I think there needs to be something that says, assuming they're under the same regulation they have now, if they change to a private organization, they should be covered the same as everybody else. That's my opinion. That's what I think we need to do. And I think we need to make that clear in this bill.
Kathy Sheehy, for the record, thank you for the comment and question, Senator Daly. We would be happy to review that and have further discussions.
And I appreciate that. Like I said, it may or may not happen, and if they still have the same regulatory process and oversight, being a federal agency, that's fine. But if they go private, they should be the same as every other organization or institution doing business in the state of Nevada. And I think we can make a pretty simple change that says, you know, as long as they maintain their unique status, which was my first question. So. Thank you, and look forward to hearing from you and working on getting that clarified.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Daly. And I do encourage those discussions to continue after this bill hearing. I did have a few questions myself, and thank you so much again for the presentation, Commissioner, and we look forward to further discussions. One of my questions was, many licensees are already required under Nevada law to comply with federal policy and data security rules. So I guess why does the agency believe some of these new requirements are necessary?
Kathy Sheehy, for the record. Thank you, Senator Pizzina, for the question. It basically comes down to the authority, because at this time, the safeguard rule seeks for the companies to comply to that, but then we have no authority. So if the company doesn't comply to some of these basic standards that the safeguard rule outlines, then we don't have any authority to require them to or seek compliance of them to that safeguard rule. So this is just an extension of the rule. Again, it just requires them to comply, but then if they don't comply, then we don't have any authority.
Thank you so much. My next question would be, would you say there are any meaningful differences between existing federal regulations, 16 CFR Section 314, and the requirements that are in this bill? I just don't want to create confusion by requiring licensees to comply with maybe a different set of rules.
Again, thank you for the question, Kathy Sheehy. For the record, to you, Senator Pazina. That is the hope of the divisions as well, and that's why we've taken the approach of referencing the federal safeguard rule in order to not create different or additional layers of laws or regulations for these companies to comply to. So most of these companies, as they meet the thresholds that are required, are already complying and meeting these standards. So we just want to make sure that they don't have additional laws or regulations state by state, because typically, especially on the non-depository side, the companies operate in more than one state across the U.S. And so this will ensure that they only have to comply with the safeguard rule as written, instead of each state having their own.
Thank you so much. And the bill does look to apply to a number of different industries. It's pretty extensive. So I guess, and Senator Rogich asked this earlier, but do you think there may be a cost associated with the agencies actually enforcing these requirements, where we would need a fiscal note?
Kathy Sheehy, for the record, thank you for the question, Senator Pazina. We do not expect a fiscal note at this time, especially because we conduct examinations currently, and there's no additional cost associated to that, because we're just going to include if this bill were to be passed, the new laws and regulations that will be put under our respective provisions. And there won't be anything new that we would need to do. As far as the industry, that's exactly why we're trying to make sure that it's model law language or existing safeguard rules, so that there isn't anything that the industry will need to do in addition to what they're already doing to minimize the fiscal impact to the industry.
Thank you so much. And I think you answered this a bit earlier, but what would you say the agency's intent is for new authority to adopt the regulations under Section 42, Part 4 of the bill? Would these mirror federal regulations, and do you think there could be any conflict? Commissioner?
Kathy Sheehy, for the record, and you said that was Section 42?
Let's see. Under Section 42, Sub 4. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay. No.
No, I know it takes a little while on some of these to get through them. Shall adopt regulations establishing procedures and requirements for notifying the commissioner of a notification event pursuant to 138 to 41 inclusive and 43 to 47 inclusive of this act. I think it's just when we're looking to enact these rules, I guess the concern is something might potentially conflict with one another as we go forward. So I'm just looking for assurances that we're on the straight path and we're not going to have conflicting rules for our industries.
Sandy O'Loughlin, Commissioner of Financial Institutions Division, for the record. We do not see any dual impact to our licensees.
And one final question. Existing federal regulations provide an electronic form for notifying the FTC of a notification act. Will the notification form be similar for the purposes of SB 44? And if so, would your agency accept a notification submitted to a federal agency to satisfy those requirements, or would it need to be the additional form?
Kathy Sheehy, for the record, the intent is to make it as easy as possible, so electronic will be definitely welcomed, and we'll make it as easy as possible for the industry. We don't want for this to become an additional task. However, because we don't get the information from the FTC, we'll just figure out the easiest means for them to provide it to us as regulators.
Okay. Thank you so much. And with that, unless there's, oh, Senator Ellison.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. One of the questions I've got, I know this is a Nevada law, but how many states has adopted this program? And is this going to be a federal law that's going to, every state's going to have to comply with? Or are we putting something out strictly for Nevada?
Kathy Sheehy for the record. Thank you, Senator Ellison, for the question. For prudential standards, I can say that at this time, 7 states have adopted this prudential standard. 4 are in current legislation to pass the prudential standards, and those that did not adopt the law have it in their policy. On the non-depository mortgage lending, the data security, as of today, the 7 states have adopted this specific model law, and there's others that are looking at it today.
Thank you, Madam.
All right. Seeing no further. Oh, sorry about that. One more. I'm Senator Steinbeck.
Thank you, Chair. You said that this doesn't change the requirements, but that it would change the ability to enforce. In the absence of that, are there federal agencies that are able to enforce this now without you being able to enforce it?
Thank you for the question, Kathy Sheehy. To you, Senator Steinbeck. There are, but at this time, we do not have the authority. So if the federal level counterparts do not enforce it, don't take action, then these entities potentially would be not complying with the standard rules, and we would have no way to hold them to that.
Sandy O'Loughlin for the record as well. The federal agency would be the FTC currently. The state doesn't have any regulatory authority.
Okay, and just as a follow-up, do you refer these issues over to them then currently?
Kathy Sheehy for the record, thank you for the question, Senator Steinbeck. We can and we have, but we also try to work collaboratively with other state regulators and have done joint efforts as state regulators rather than federal. But that takes a lot of resources and collaboration at the state level. But yes, it is possible.
Okay, apparently we have 2 more, and then we're going to switch over to our support, opposition, and neutral. So Senator Rogich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you give an example of an incident that has occurred that has is the basis for the agency wanting these new regulations?
Kathy Sheehy for the record. Thank you, Senator Rogich. One example that recently took place would be it was a company, well, a parent company with 3 other companies associated with it, that the Conference of State Banking Supervisor took action on just recently of $20 million because they had deficient cybersecurity practices and not fully cooperating with state regulators following a data breach that impacted 5.3 million consumers, and it affected almost every state in the U.S. So things like that, where we want to make sure that it puts Nevada in a position where we can take action. Like mentioned before, right now they need to comply, but if they don't comply, we have no ability to enforce this. And as everybody probably knows, data security and cybersecurity is a huge issue. It's not a matter of when, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when this is going to occur. So we would like to put Nevada in a position where we do have the authority to ensure that the companies that want to operate in Nevada have at least a standard that needs to be met.
One more follow-up, and then we'll move into our support, opposition, and neutral. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Did the federal government take enforcement action in that particular incident?
Thank you for the question. Kathy Sheehy for the record. Senator Rogich, no, this is a collaboration with the states.
Okay. Thank you so much for the robust questions, and thank you so much for presenting the bill, Commissioner Sheehy. Right now, we are going to move to testimony in support, opposition, and neutral of Senate Bill 44. I would ask anyone in support to please come up to the tables in Carson City or Las Vegas to share your support. Seeing no one coming up in Carson City, and I believe we still have our presenters at the table in Las Vegas. And I don't think, having looked at our attendance in Las Vegas, we have too many more people who are coming up. Broadcast, do we have anyone on the phones?
Chair, your public line is open and working, but you have no callers at this time.
Okay. Seeing no one racing to the tables here in Carson City, down south, or over broadcast, we are going to close out support testimony for SB 44 and ask that anyone in opposition please come to the table in Carson City or Las Vegas. And please begin when you're ready. Do state and spell your name for the record. Thank you.
Good morning. Pardon me. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Andrew McKay. That's ANDREW-MACKAY. I'm the executive director of the Nevada Franchised Auto Dealers Association. You're probably wondering, what am I doing at the table? Because we represent the car dealers. Well, simply put, my members are subject to the FTC Safeguards Rule under the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act. We've been subject to the Safeguards Rule since 2003. There were extensive revisions to that rule commenced about 6 or 7 years ago, and finally was fully implemented in May of last year. And that last component was, in fact, the notification part, which is getting a lot of discussion. The reason why I'm here, and I believe there's some ambiguity in the bill relative to the applicability as it relates to my members, because if you look in terms of the digest, it simply says, and I'll just read it verbatim, require a person to, one, maintain the information security program required by existing federal regulations. We are, again, subject to those regulations. So I want to just, I think that's important before I formally, Madam Chair, and I will be brief. Much of what was contained in the presentation I was going to hit on in terms of some of the nuts and bolts of the Safeguards Rule. You don't need to hear that again. But our concern is this, is in the committee, I think, had very probing and good questions with respect to duplication of the Safeguards Rule and what is being ultimately contemplated. I do want to address and follow up on two questions that were asked by the committee, one by Senator Flores and I believe it was Senator Rogich. When there is a breach, and it is determined, and again, it is 500 or more pieces of personal information that is encrypted, and that or non-encrypted information, that is the key. If it's non-encrypted, you have to do the report. That report then is subsequently sent to the FTC, and the FTC publishes that in a publicly accessible database. It is extremely easy to access. You can look at it from your own personal standpoint or from a company's aspect. So with respect to the availability of the information of any data breach, that's readily available as of today under the Safeguards Rule. And I will say this, the FTC does an excellent job maintaining that database. And I believe it was Senator Rogich that asked about penalties. And I think this is really important. Any violation of the Safeguards Rule, per violation, a company can face over $46,000 per violation. I believe it's $46,400 thereabouts. The way the fees at the FTC the fines that are assessed at the FTC, they in essence ratchet up either with inflation or the CPI. So
we are getting closer to 3 minutes. So
I didn't know I was limited to 3 minutes, ma'am. I'll be.
Well, it's usually 2, but we're going to go ahead and let you continue for another minute or two. But let's, if you can.
Easy peasy. I mean, I think I can summarize it in this. At least for my members, this is duplicative in nature, and we think that the system works very well. Consumer protection, we find that is our biggest concern. That is our biggest worry, and we take it very seriously. And the fact of the matter is, Madam Chair, and I'll wrap it up, we do these reportings, and we think that already it exists. Now, if there are financial entities that don't do that under federal law, I understand what the state is doing, but if we're not to be caught up in this, I just would respectfully request that we be exempted out of the bill, because we do everything and then some of what's contemplated in the piece of legislation. So I apologize going long, Senator.
I always enjoy seeing you, and I always enjoy hearing you speak, Mr. McKay. And thank you so much for coming up today. Also, if you have any further comment, please do share it with the committee secretary so we can make sure that it is in the record on Nellis for this.
I'll do that. Thank you.
Please, and thank you.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question out loud to see if the opposition can answer it?
Yes, Senator Flores.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is for anybody in opposition, or maybe the commissioner when she comes back up with final remarks. In discussing penalties, do we know if by implementing this bill, there could be a scenario where you're getting fined at the federal level and then again at the state level? Do we know if we're opening the door for that?
Madam Chair, through you to Senator Flores.
You can go direct, and thank you.
That bad habit, you're going to have to lecture me on that several times. Just be warned. Thank you, ma'am. Senator, the way I read it, the short answer is yes.
Good morning, Chair Pazina and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Nick Schneider, Director of Government Affairs for the Vegas Chamber. I don't know if I can do a better job of explaining our opposition than my colleague just did. We are also in opposition of SB 44 as written, with an emphasis just really on our concern of that this drafting results in duplicative regulations and penalties. We truly appreciate the intention of this bill and are very open to a discussion of that. So thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Senator Ellison, and thank you.
I apologize. I didn't hear what company you were with.
Nick Schneider, for the record, the Vegas Chamber. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to Mr. Schneider and Mr. McKay. Do we have anyone in Las Vegas in opposition? Not seeing anyone. Broadcast, do we have anyone on the phones?
If you would like to testify in opposition of SB 44, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good morning, Madam Chair. My name is Brian Wachter. I'm the Senior Vice President of the Retail Association of Nevada. We too have concerns about how SB 44 is currently written. We echo the comments of Mr. McKay and the gentleman from the Vegas Chamber. For those of our members who are already subject to these provisions on the federal level, we're struggling to see how this provides any additional consumer protection for those. We do understand if there are cases where there are folks missing from this kind of direct line of accountability, but for the same reasons on duplicative efforts and for the fact that we don't think this actually strengthens consumer protection for those consumers who are already subject, we would respectfully ask for us to be able to work on an amendment that excludes us from the bill. And we thank you for the time to be able to address this issue with you this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Wachter. Do we have anyone else on the line, broadcast?
You have no more callers at this time.
All right. Seeing no one else at the table in Las Vegas or in Carson City, I am going to close out opposition to Senate Bill 44 and ask that anyone wishing to testify in neutral on SB 44, please approach the table in Carson City, Las Vegas, or be ready on the phones. All right, seeing no one running up to visit with us on neutral in Carson City and no one in Las Vegas, broadcast, is there anyone wishing to testify in neutral on the phone lines?
Your public line is open and working, and you have no callers at this time.
All right, thank you so much. With that, I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 44 and thank the Commissioner of the Lending Division, Ms. Kathy Sheehy, for visiting with us for that presentation today. And we will now move to the next item of the agenda, which is public comments. As a reminder, members of the public can provide public comment in person, by phone, or submit written public comment to the committee's email. Instructions for providing public comment can be found on the agenda, including the call-in information. We look forward to hearing your comments and ask that you keep them brief and please avoid repetition of comments made by previous speakers. Due to time constraints, we may have to move on to the next person who wants to provide public comment, and in such a case, we ask that you please send us your public comment in writing to the committee's email address. Finally, please state and spell your name for the record. We'll begin with public comment from the physical locations and then move to anyone who is calling in over the phone. So starting out in Carson City, please approach the table if you'd like to make public comment. We're a little quieter than judiciary on the public comment front. Anyone in Las Vegas? People are running away. Broadcast, anyone on the phones?
Thank you, Chair. You have no callers at this time.
All right. Seeing as we have no public comment, I am going to close that item on the agenda. And that concludes our meeting for today. Our next meeting will be Monday, February the 10th at 8 a.m. This meeting is adjourned.